Okay. There's another episode of Hot. I'm joking. Hi, everybody. Hopefully, this is the last time I will be lagging like this. I'm getting a system that does not have this issue. So, welcome to Embrace Your Edges. Remember to subscribe and like this video if you like it. We're going to be talking today about postpartum depression as well as the link to endometriosis. So remember to drop your comments and hit that subscription button. Okay, here we go. So you asked, what is postpartum depression? It is not a character flaw or weakness, and this is the part where we talk about the secrets and the shame behind postpartum and postpartum depression. So sometimes it's simply a complication of giving birth. If you have postpartum depression, prompt treatments can help you manage your symptoms and help you bond with your baby. Postpartum period begins soon after birth, and usually lasts for 6 to 8 weeks. Some people go a little bit longer, and ends when the mother body has nearly returned to its pregnancy pre-state. The postpartum period for a woman and for her newborn is very important in both short-term and long-term health and well-being. The birth of a baby can start at a variety of powerful emotions, from excitement to joy to fear to anxiety, but it can also result in something you might not expect, and that is depression. And we're going to talk about postpartum depression. We're going to talk about postpartum psychosis, some other areas of postpartum depression. And then we're also going to swing a little bit into endometriosis, and that has to do with a disorder that mainly affect Black women. And sorry, I think I lost my feed a little bit here. There we go. It mainly affects women of color and the region between Africa and the Mediterranean, but that's the offspring of it. However, it can affect anyone that have linkage to those areas. So, as I said, postpartum, the period begins soon after the delivery. Most new moms experience postpartum, and we call it baby blues after childbirth, and which is commonly includes mood swings, the crying spells. Oh my God, the crying spells, anxiety and difficulty sleeping. Baby blues usually begin within the first 2 to 3 days after delivery and may last up to 2 weeks or more. Okay. But some new moms experience a more severe, long-lasting form of depression known as postpartum depression. And sometimes it's called because it starts after the pregnancy and continues after childbirth. So rarely an extreme mood disorder called postpartum psychosis that also develops after childbirth. So how do you know you're having depression after childbirth? Well, it varies. It can go from, as I said, from mild to severe. The mild will be the baby blues symptoms, and which will last for a few days or a few weeks or 2 days or so after the baby's born. It can be like mood swings, anxiety, sadness, irritability, feeling overwhelmed. It could be some crying, reduce of concentration, loss of appetite, trouble sleeping, and then hits the postpartum depression symptoms. So postpartum depression may be mistaken for baby blues at first, okay? But symptoms are more intense and long lasting. These are often interfere with your ability to care for your baby or handle other daily tasks. And usually it develops within the first few weeks after giving birth, but they begin earlier during the pregnancy, okay, or later up to a year after birth. And like, for example, myself, I had postpartum depression. And I'll tell you this, it started, as I said, during my pregnancy. Something was wrong. It was my second birth, my second child, and it didn't feel like the first. I felt like I was a tool. I didn't feel like a mom. I didn't feel like a mom. I felt frustrated. I felt not cared about, insignificant. I felt like a bad mom. It was like so many different things going on. And I didn't know how to navigate it, because that guilt and that shame, because when you're, pregnant, you're supposed to be, as society says, very excited and happy, and you're supposed to have all these positive thoughts. But when you start to have postpartum depression, as it develops, there's a lot of negativity and a lot of negative thoughts that go on. So some of the symptoms you'll notice: depressive mood swings. They're severe mood swings, by the way. I was sharing with Collect with Love that when I was going through postpartum depression, and this is, after birth, not during the pregnancy, but after birth. During the pregnancy, I became, because I had a very difficult pregnancy, the second one, and I almost lost my baby. And I was also, I had to be in a certain position. I had to be in a certain position during the labor, not only labor, but the pregnancy. So I was bedridden for the last 2.5 months of the pregnancy, and it was horrible. It really was. And I was left alone sometimes, and there was just so much stuff going on in my relationship as well. So I just felt alone. I felt completely alone, completely insignificant. People would come up to me and they would talk about my baby, they would talk about my belly, but they wouldn't even ask me how I was doing. And I just had this anger that I couldn't understand, and I couldn't share, because I felt like if I did, I would be considered a bad mom, or that something was wrong with me. I thought I was losing my mind. It was just so much going on. So when they say severe, it's severe. I remember putting my fist through the door of my bedroom closet, like punching it, from hearing the baby cry, Never to hurt my baby, but I had all kind of crazy thoughts, But not everyone has the ability to get help or has the access to finances. And we're going to talk about that when I start talking about endometriosis. So, as I said, severe mood swings, depression moods, crying too much, difficulty bonding with your baby. I had that because he didn't want to drink. He didn't want to breastfeed at all. No, he wanted to breastfeed. Wrong kid. He wanted to breastfeed, and he breastfed for an entire year. And I started losing weight. I wasn't eating properly. I didn't feel like a person, like I matter. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel, and withdrawal from family and friends. I was isolated, so I was already withdrawal from family and friends. Loss of appetite. That's why I experienced as well eating, much more. That happened in my first pregnancy, and this is the part too where you don't even realize sometimes you have postpartum depression. So I realized it in my second pregnancy. In my first pregnancy, I didn't know what it was, so I couldn't name it. But I went from a size 10 to a size 30 in a year. And inability to sleep, yes, insomnia or sleep too much, overwhelming tiredness or loss of energy, loss of interest or pleasure in activities. I didn't want to do a damn thing. And I couldn't anyways because I was bedridden. And then when I didn't want to, I didn't know. Listen, it was difficult to even wake up in the morning. Okay. Fear that you're not a good mother. That's the part. That's the part that keeps you silent. And this is the part of society that I don't understand. We have all these different, uh, you know, understanding, and when it comes to uh, any type of depression outside of postpartum depression, and a lot of women and we women are very very guilty for doing this, not saying when we need help or not saying when we can't deal with something or figure something out when you are a mom. And then there's that hopelessness. I'm going to add one more piece to that and say shame. There's hopelessness and there's also shame because I felt a lot of shame. And, feeling worthlessness, guilt. I felt like I didn't know how to be a mom. My mom died before I had children, and so I didn't know how to navigate that either. Reducibility to think clearly or concentrate. I didn't care. I really didn't. I just didn't care anymore. I stopped caring about myself. I stopped caring about anything. I just wanted to not talk about it, but I couldn't explain myself anyways. And then restlessness. You stay up. Nothing makes you happy. Severe anxiety and panic attacks. I had a panic attack that ended me up in the hospital getting a needle in my stomach. I had a panic attack where I thought I was having a heart attack, and my body just kept reacting as though I was having a heart attack. And so they were treating me as though I was having a heart attack. And it was just a simple trigger that got me. A trigger that if I was in my conscious self, I wouldn't be triggered by. It would be insignificant. But everything becomes so magnified when you have postpartum depression. Thoughts of harming yourself or your baby. I used to have, because where we live, we had this stair drop, and it was about 2 flights down, and I think about 20 feet, 22 feet altogether from the top to the bottom. And I remember so many times when the baby was sleeping or no one was around, standing there and wishing to fall, and maybe it'll be all over. And then untreated postpartum depression may last for many months or even longer. And when I say longer, I had to get help to deal with my postpartum depression. So if you don't get the help, and this is a rare condition, but it does happen to some women, and this is where we see women that will, and if you are triggered by this conversation or need to step away, I am going to be very raw because I want people to realize how serious this condition is. They have women that will jump in front of a train with their child or with themselves, or will commit suicide, and you have no clue why, and taking their children with them. You have women that will just abandon their families and leave, and people don't know why. There was that situation that happened a couple of months back where that one lady faked her own kidnapping, and people was rushed to judge. We don't know. We don't know. So postpartum psychosis is a rare condition that usually develops within the first week after delivery, and the symptoms are very severe, extremely severe. The person normally feels confused and lost, having obsessive thoughts about their baby. They might hallucinate sometimes or become delusional, have sleep problems. They won't have any energy. They'll be always upset about something. Extreme paranoid, and when I say paranoia, I mean paranoia. They Hi baby Eiffel, how you doing? Thanks for coming. They make attempts to harm themselves and the baby. Hi Broody, hi. Everyone say hi. Hey, how you guys doing? And it may lead to life-threatening thoughts or behavior that require immediate treatment. And I'm going to give you some numbers at the end of the show to reach out. If you know any person that is dealing with postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, please, please do not shame them. Get them the help they need. So we have Baby Eiffel saying that I think that in the Caribbean we deal with pregnancy. Most of what you are talking about, I never heard in the islands. Well, I'll tell you why you never heard about it in the islands, because you're about to get shocked when I get to the second part of my show tonight, where we talk about endometriosis and the link that we have from endometriosis to postpartum depression, and the fact that endometriosis is normally in a black disease. It does happen in other cultures, but it stems from Africa and the Mediterranean, and it's spread out. So obviously, we've all mixed in some capacity, but that's where it normally deals from. And so so if you look at the Caribbean, that is majority black. I'm telling you, a lot of women in the Caribbean do have postpartum depression. It's not talked about in a lot of places, including North America. And the reason why they don't talk about it is because the shame that's associated to feeling like you want to hurt yourself or hurt your baby, or that you're not good enough mom, or you can't handle being a mom, or something around that area. So there's so much shame that's put on it when a person starts acting out after childbirth or during pregnancy, where they're not happy about the pregnancy, or they don't feel valued, or they just have this depression that comes over them and they can't explain themselves, lack of support system or whatsoever, or whatever dramatics happen within the pregnancy. And so that is not talked about, and you're right, it's not talked about, Baby Eiffel. Postpartum depression, studies have shown that new fathers can experience postpartum depression, and this is the part we don't even talk about because it's always associated with women, right? They feel sad, tired, overwhelmed, anxious, or have changes in their usual eating or sleeping patterns, and they have the same symptoms as the mother with postpartum depression experience. So fathers, especially those that are young or have a history of depression, experience relationship problems, or are struggling with financial, are the most ones that are at risk for postpartum depression. Postpartum depression in fathers sometimes are called paternal postpartum depression, can also have the same negative effect as postpartum or the partner relationship with the child. Lack of development and postpartum depression that have in the mothers can as well. So if your partner or your new mom are having any symptoms of depression or anxiety during their partner's pregnancy or after the child's birth, talk to your healthcare provider. They have treatments and supports in the community that provide mothers as well as fathers with postpartum depression help to get them through what they're dealing with. And when do you need to see a doctor? For me, I say right away. So if you're feeling depressed after giving birth, or even while you're pregnant, because that's the sign, it's during the pregnancy it really comes at you, and you're reluctant to or embarrassed to even admit that you're having these thoughts, a feeling of not wanting to be, a mom, a feeling of not wanting to be a dad, of feeling overwhelmed, or like you're just a vessel, you're just a tool. If you're having any of these, talk to some person. But if you want to experience any symptoms of, but if you're experiencing any symptoms of postpartum baby blues or postpartum depression, call your health care provider or your obstetrician or gynecologist, and schedule an appointment. Because if you have those symptoms, I suggest that you know you do that as soon as possible, because you do not want that to lead to postpartum psychosis. That is a very severe depression that sometimes is not recoverable. So it's important to call them as soon as possible. You see those kind of depressions. Don't, it doesn't fade after 2 weeks. That's how you know. Like, because we're going through so much with our bodies when we're having these issues, or when we're pregnant, or, dealing with any part of the uterus, that you're going to have mood swings. So, but if it stays after 2 weeks and it's getting worse as you go, and it makes it hard for you to care for your baby or yourself, or even complete like your daily tasks, include thoughts of harming yourself or your baby, or if you're suicidal thoughts, at any point those thoughts of harming yourself or baby, immediately seek help from your partner, your loved ones, or your support system. And you have to call 911 if it gets that severe. Okay. You might want to also consider other options when you have suicidal thoughts. Mental health provider. In the U.S., you can call 988. That's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and they are available 24 hours. Here in Canada, Collect with Love, can you send me that information for the Canadian one as well? And, you can always reach out to a friend or a loved one. Those, find someone that you trust, not the preacher. And when I say the preacher, I'm not talking about religion now. I'm talking about the person that you're going to reach out to that's going to give you a lecture. You don't want that person during that time. You want a support system that's going to listen to you and hear exactly what you're saying. And people with depression may not recognize or admit that they're depressed. So you too, as the family member or support system, look and see, what's going on for them, what's different, what's happening. Or do you see any signs that have an alarm that you're like, well, that's not them. Okay, so it's 988 here as well. Okay, so it's on both the Canadian and the American side are both 988. Now let's talk about something I'm very passionate about, and that's endometriosis. And I'm talking about this as a woman of color, as well as well, now I'm a single mom. I wasn't a single mom then when I was giving birth, but to single moms as well. It is often a painful condition, and in which a tissue that is similar to the inner liner of the uterus grows outside of the uterus. It is often affects the ovaries, the fallopian tubes, and the tissue lining of the pelvis. And it's really a growth maybe beyond the area where the pelvic and the organs are located. Now, the reason I'm talking about this, because, and I'm going to go there, black women are always, there's always that line of black women are strong, right? And that can be considered a microaggression. And it can also, it's very stereotypical as well. Black women are human beings, like everybody else. And because she's been put under a lot of different strains of society, of the colonialism, does not make her strong. It makes her tolerable and try to navigate through all these different things that have been placed in front of her. And one of the things that placed in front of her where we don't have much help for or support for, and it's hard for a lot of women to find information about endometriosis, especially when it comes to women of color. A lot of women do complain about this disease and about this issue, but they're told, deal with it, it's just period pain, you're fine, whatever. Now, the reason why I can tell you about that, because it happened to me. So here comes the part of my pregnancy. So the collect with web, why am I seeing, why am I not seeing the people anymore? Live chat. Okay, there we go. Okay, so while I was, I told you about my pregnancy. So before I ended up in the bed, I went downstairs to do some laundry, and then all of a sudden I started bleeding. I was like, what is happening? And I was in so much pain, and I was rushed to the hospital. Get to the hospital, and the doctors are like, you have to choose between you and your baby. And they weren't very gentle with me, by the way. It was very much like, this is what's going to happen. And I'm an advocate for a lot of things. And one of them is ignorance. I don't tolerate ignorance. So, a lot of women do go into a panic where it's like, you're going to die, and you have to give up your baby. Like there's no choices, without giving you all the facts and all the information so that women can make the right decision, and her spouse, for what happens next. And so I was told that they will have to abort the baby because I have endometriosis, or something is wrong. They're not sure what it is, but it's either me or the baby. And so I love phones. So I went on it, and just, what is what is that? I didn't know what it was. And I realized it does affect a lot of women of color, and a lot of women of color do not have education around it. And it's easy to say abort the baby, but what they didn't tell me, and what I saw online, thank you Google, was that once the baby was born, it was going to be flushed out. Certain parts of it was going to be flushed out, and as long as the baby is not inside of the uterus, I can still have the baby while having that, and it wouldn't be an issue, because it does create fibroids as well, right? So I refused, and they told me, oh, well, you're putting your baby in jeopardy and whatever. And thank God I had a really great gynecologist. I went and saw her the next day, and she said, yeah, the baby is on the issue you're having is on the outside of the uterus, and so we don't have to abort the baby. But she said it's going to be a very difficult pregnancy, and right now your body is actually in labor, in the position of labor. And I was only 6 months pregnant. Yes, I was 6 months. And so they told me what they can use me as an incubator, or take the baby out now and then put it in an incubator. And I was like, absolutely not. I will go and I will be the incubator for 2.5 months. And that's what I did. I laid in a position like this for 2.5 months. It was horrible. It was a lot of pain. But that's the link between postpartum depression and endometriosis. And that's what started happening. I started having so many bad thoughts, and I felt not supported, and I felt alone, and I felt not a good mom, and all these things started creeping up, and I just felt isolated and just like, and I was tired. I was so tired, you know, and I felt, I never use this word too much, but I felt crazy. Like something was like, what's wrong with me? And then I was being pressured to give birth. Like I could just give it. There was just so much going on. And so endometriosis and postpartum depression goes hand in hand. And so that's what happened with me. So women with it normally have menstrual problems, and that's how, you know, I started my period when I was 8 years old. Imagine 8 years old getting my period. Girl, let me tell you something. My period story. We all have period stories, right? You guys can drop me your period story. Hey Rudy, drop me your period story. you can you can drop me your period story in the chat. My period story. I was 8 years old, and I was born in the Caribbean, and so 8 years old, you're in school. You're in school, and school, not like, and I didn't know what was going on. I stood up to answer a question. The person behind me said, "Oh, your family's visiting," and I didn't know what you're talking about. And then they said, "Your ketchup bottle broke," and I have no clue what they're talking about. And then he just yelled, "You have your period, you're bleeding," and I was like, "What?" And I ran all the way home, and all the way home was about, I would say, let's say 30 clicks. Okay, it took me a good hour to get home running. Okay, and I got it home, and thank God my mom was home that day. And I started screaming. I was like, "Oh my God, Mom, I'm dying! I'm dying!" And she said, "You dying?" I said, "Yes, blood. I'm dying." She goes, "Go take a shower. I'll fix you up." And that's when I learned about what menstrual period and cramps are. I was in so much pain from day one. I was in just lots of tummy pain. Yep, lots of tummy pain. I was in pain. I mean, severe pain from day one. And I always had problems with my menstrual cycle. I remember at 16 not having period for a whole year. I was happy as hell. People want to know if I'm pregnant. I wasn't sexually active, so I didn't care. I was just celebrating. I was like, "Woo, no period." But I would have a period where I would go through a complete box of pads in a day or two. It was just really, it was saturated. So I always felt like something was wrong with me. And then I was told when I was 15, no, 16, a little bit later in that year, after not having my period, I was told by the doctors that I couldn't have children. And that was corrected without my permission, by the way. But, so Nicole says, "Me too. I was late. LOL. Got hers at 16 years old. She got her period at 16 years old." So going back to endometriosis, it shows that when you get any kind of mental health screening, when you're dealing with your menstrual period, especially when it's really bad, that West Indies for you, never direct. I know, girl. That's the thing when it comes to culture. Some cultures do not talk about certain things, and my culture was one of them. They didn't talk about that kind of stuff. They just left it alone. You had to figure that out yourself. Women demonstrate high levels of depression among women with endometriosis compared to those who do not have the effects. And depression is even stronger when you have that disease. The pain seems to be primarily associated with the area of depression. In fact, rates of depression were similar between women with pelvic pain and those who have endometriosis. So, with no doubt, there is a direct relationship between the disease and and postpartum depression, and it's a complicated one. So, things that you can have is like chronic pains, depressive symptoms, and without treatment, can become extremely, it can go into postpartum psychosis. Antidepressants are normally used during this time to help people deal and manage with the severe pain of endometriosis. That's how bad it is. The pain is so crippling sometimes you can't even walk. There is a person in my family, in my God family, that Sandy, thank you. She saw me one day. She's in the medical field, and she saw me, and how crippled I was in pain, and gave me a pill, and that was the best pill ever. And what she told me was that the period actually comes from the lower back pain, and if you treat that area, it will lessen the pain and the severity of the bleeding. And she was right. I mean, she's a doctor, so she should know. After regular or vaginal deliveries, for example, there's a report that says that postpartum endometriosis happens to 1 to 3%, and then 5 to 6 to 10% after a person has a C-section, for example. So C-sections, 5 in 10, okay, develop postpartum depression. That's how severe a C-section. Listen, when they told me about C-section, I was like, no. Some people don't have a choice now, but I was like, I did natural childbirth. I didn't take anything, not even the pill. I just wanted, because I read somewhere that if you give birth naturally, you can basically get up and go after. So I was like, ooh, that's what I want. I tore a little bit, but they sewed it up and I was good to go. But yeah, I didn't want none of that. So prolonged labor can also bring on some postpartum endometriosis after birth, and it's more common after prolonged labor, like I had, where the long period passes between the rupture and the fetal embryos and delivery. So internal infections can happen, and it's more likely that it will occur. So prenatal infections, those are like the mom develops an infection during pregnancy, or have like an active infection when she goes into labor, and she's likely to develop to postpartum endometriosis, which is a more severe type of endometriosis. Internal examinations are done by doctors. So how they did with me was they did a biopsy to see how bad it was. And I mean, thank God for the kind of gynecologists I had. I had one gynecologist that kept giving me D&Cs. I got like 11 D&Cs, and I didn't know what the heck was going on, why I was getting them. And this is another thing with women of color, like some of the stuff that they put us through and some of the torture that they put us through, they wouldn't put other people through, but we're supposed to be strong. Okay, and I was really upset because he's a brother, and he should know better, But you have to advocate for yourself. You really, truly do. You know your body more than anybody else, and you have to be able to tell that doctor how you're truly feeling. Do not take shame away. Take the fear away, and say something. You really have to. So what are the symptoms of postpartum endometriosis? Well, they can elevate from your temperature to things like pain to mild swelling in your abdomen. So you look like you're pregnant all the time. You ever see the person in there? So endometriosis can sometimes be mistaken for fibroids, because both of them cause the same kind of pain and swelling and urination issues, as well as that bloating look. But the difference between the fibroids and endometriosis is that with the fibroids, you can actually feel that there's something solid there, whereas endometriosis, you can't really feel that there's something there. The problem with identifying the symptoms of it can be difficult, and you can really tell whether or not within weeks of giving birth. So there are 2 ways in which endometriosis can be removed. Um, and another thing is endometriosis can lead to cancer. I mean, it is a cancer, but it can lead to formulation of stage cancer. So that's why it's very important that when you have a lot of bleeding, whether it's during pregnancy, after pregnancy, or even during your menstrual period, that you should seek medical help and let your doctor know what's going on. Uh, so Nicole says, Tori, I was in the hospital, so I work out. Okay, hold on. I was in the hospital, so I worked out. Tori. What's Tori? What's Tore? I'm not sure what that means. um, yeah, there is a lot of shame around these conversations, but it's what us women go through. I feel like society make us feel shame to discuss these things. It does, because remember, when you become a mom, you're supposed to be a superhero and figure everything out in 2 seconds. And apparently there's a book that I didn't get access to and nobody else got access to. So I don't even know who society is anymore, because when we say society, I just go to the fact it's capitalistic ideologies. That's where I go. Um, so some of the things that you can, you might be able to tell if you have postpartum depression. You always have some kind of fever issue, and this normally happens days after childbirth. um, your urine tender is very tender, like when you urinate. Vaginal bleeding is always a great sign of endometriosis when it's not your menstrual time. Swelling in the vaginal discharge, pain during urination, and your stomach pain. Of course, the swelling, as I said, is sometimes some people think that they have fibroids. Postpartum endometriosis is initially diagnosed through a physician examination, normally through ultrasound. They can see it, and they can even do a vaginal swab as well. But make sure that you trust your damn doctor, because do not just go with the first person that tells you something. Get a second opinion. Make sure that that's what it is. It is very much, there's so much a line between endometriosis as well as fibroids. You want to make sure you're treating the right thing. And then there's cervical cancer that can also look like endometriosis as well. So most people, most cases of it can be affected. Um, you can be treated with antibiotics, with surgery, of course. That's when it gets too severe, because normally when it gets to that stage of surgery, there's always fibroids associated with it. Um, so there are antibiotics that you can reach out to your physician for, and you know, but know the risk. There are a lot of risks. Prolong, and this is the part where a lot of women of color, or a lot of women that don't have access to benefits or to funds. I know the United States have a higher healthcare system cost than here in Canada. Thank God for that. But on the Canadian side, we still have that issue that we're dealing with when it comes to systemic racism, and we have to deal with that in order to deal with the medical field that does not understand women of color. Now imagine me, okay? I mean, yeah, my shades are a little bit lighter in my complexion, and I went to the hospital, and I had this nurse try to give me a needle, intravenous, 5 times, talking about she can't find my vein, and I told her she had one more time. Because I don't condone violence, but what are you doing with any kind of registry or or license if you cannot uh, look at anyone and find their veins? The only way you should not be in the medical field be able to find a person's vein is if the person's vein is so flat because they're dehydrated. And I learned that from my doctor. He told me that. He said she was ignorant. It was his words, not mine. And he apologized, and I told him not to. It's not his fault. And he said, there's no reason for that, because that added to my stress. I mean, I'm already going through having to be, now think about this is where, maybe we talk about, women don't talk about it. This is why. Now, I already have all these thoughts of negativity and stress and all these things and shame and whatever. And then I am told that, because of me, that's how I feel. Because of me, my baby is now in jeopardy. It's lying this way and can't move. And then because of me, I have to now lie in this position to give birth, or my baby's going to die. I have to make sure I stay still. If I don't stay still, my baby's going to die, you know. And then because of me, like everything is because of me. And now I go in to get health care and I'm treated differently because of the color of my skin. And this woman is poking up my damn hand, talking about she can't find a vein, you know. Uh, all of that. And then the baby's born and everyone's like, oh, the baby, the baby, the baby. And no one's looking at me because now it's like I'm torn. And I'm like, what am I worth now that the baby's here? That's the thought. That was the thought. Like, now what? You know? What do I do now? I didn't know what to do. You know? And I was left with all of that I dealt with during the pregnancy. And now I'm supposed to be super mom. I'm supposed to be super mom and super partner and be amazing and don't complain about anything and deal with other stresses they're dealing with in either my relationship or whatever, and I was dealing with abuse at the time as well. So now what? You know? So this is where endometriosis and when people are women of color was what interlocks with postpartum depression. Baby, I hope I answered that for you when you said that about the Caribbean and not something that it's not talked about. This is why it's not talked about, because I'm gonna say it. It's women of color. I didn't make up the rules. That was what. And preventing it, I mean, the only way to really prevent this is keeping your vaginal area clean, they say, during delivery, as well as know that if you do a C-section, you probably might develop it. So maybe not getting a C-section. Listen, when it comes to childbirth, you don't know what you're going to get. It's just like the child. You're just hoping for a healthy baby. You're hoping for a good delivery, and that you come out of that room safe, and that you can enjoy your baby, and that the baby can enjoy you. That's all you're really hoping and wishing for. But some people are just going through so much before they even give birth. So much has already happened that when that time comes, it's hard to enjoy it, or they pretend to enjoy it. And then society puts so much pressure and so much stress on mothers and fathers to be perfect. And there's no such word as perfect. There's no such word as perfection. It's all BS and made up. Okay? So there you have it. That is postpartum depression. What is it? It's a mental health disease. Okay? That's what postpartum depression is. And it can lead to other diseases, create other cancers with endometriosis adding to the depression. And then that becomes even more severe, can lead to psychosis. So postpartum depression is a mental health disease. We're all about mental health and about mental awareness. But why is it different when the mental health is a mother and it's childbirth? Why is that considered something not spoken about, to be ashamed of? Why is that different than anxiety, than ADHD, than DID, than all the other acronyms? Why is postpartum depression different? Ask yourself. So the next time you see a mom having a screaming baby and just sitting there in silence, or not wanting to talk about her growing bump, instead of criticizing, and we know there's certain celebrities that we saw in public and we saw the baby hanging in Walmart. You know what I'm talking about? Krishan was one of them, right? Instead of insulting and criticizing, reach out. Maybe that person is depressed. Maybe they don't know what to do or where to turn or where to go. So 988 is a suicide crisis helpline. It is North America wide. You can call it anytime, or you can call 911 if the issue is more severe. So I thank you so much tonight to listening to this. I really wanted to bring this up because, you know, again, it's something that we don't want to talk about, and when we do talk about it, it's very much, it's beautified and glamorized and anchored with other parts of depression, but it's different. It's different because of the shame that it carries and the danger that it can lead to and the harm that it can put onto not only the mother or father, but the child especially. So if you know anyone that's suffering with postpartum depression or endometriosis that can lead to additional areas of postpartum depression, reach out, hug, give some support, get some information that they can use. You can also reach out to your local hospitals. They have so many different areas of the mental health department that deals with postpartum depression and endometriosis as well. Remember, endometriosis is a cancer, but the effects around that can lead to depression. So, tell me about your edges. We had Peggy Unlock. She is the author of Survive, Then Thrive. We have a free copy. I don't have the book with me. I have the book, but I don't have the book with me. She's autographed it. I have it. And so let's see how we can get someone to win this book. So if you want to win a free copy of Peggy's book, drop me Collect with Love. What can we come up with? Something that can help others at the same time be fun. Let's come up with something. We got to find something around this because it's about discovery, self-discovery, and realizing, the acceptance of your flaws. And, that's the one part that we all struggle with, is we might know what the problem with, or we don't know what the problem is, but it's the acceptance of that allows us to grow, right? So we're going to come up with something fun for you to do, and you can read it. You can win that free copy. Remember to go over to Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, and you can always pick up a copy of her book. I'm going to talk about my book. My book is coming out in July. It's called F Fat I'm Black, and it has to do about all of the different traumas that I went through and me realizing that there was something else growing that I should be more concerned about and focus on, so I can be happy with myself, accept my flaws, and move on, because I believe that your flaws are your best asset. So I really want to thank Baby Eiffel and Rudy for always dropping us a line in chat and sharing some information. Remember to check out 988 Lifeline if you know someone that's dealing with depression or postpartum depression or endometriosis. They can get the help that they need. You can always reach out to your medical physician or the local hospital. And if it gets very severe, remember to call 911. Postpartum psychosis is nothing to joke about, is nothing to play around with, is extremely dangerous. It can lead to death. because most people are dealing with suicidal thoughts and paranoia. It can also lead to other mental health that are very, very dangerous. So with that, I just want to thank you all for coming through tonight. Collect with love. Thank you for always giving support. I can see there's lots of people viewing right now. Thank you for so much for your support, and we will see you next Wednesday on Embrace Your Edges. And remember to like, listen, and subscribe. And you can pick up the stream on Spotify after the live. So Colette, what are we doing next week? What are we talking about? She's always so quiet in there. Yeah, well, she's not answering me. Okay. Anyways, thank you so much, and I will see you next Wednesday. Remember to like, listen, and subscribe, and I'll catch you up on IG. Bye. Bye, everybody.